Okay, the finger of time has moved around. It's 5 o'clock. So here we go. Noswaith da achigid. Good evening to you all. I'm often asked, as are my colleagues, so what does the Royal Commission actually do? And you have to admit, don't you, that Royal Commission on the Ancient and Historical Monuments of Wales doesn't actually tell you what we do. It's a big mouthful. It's a lot of syllables. I have to take a deep breath before I say it. So we've kind of developed a mnemonic in the Commission whereby we talk about the 3 C's of our work, which is to collect, to conserve and to communicate. And I think that's really the theme of today's talk. My colleagues are going to give you insights into those 3 activities. Collecting, which will be the main focus of tonight's talk, refers to going out into the field and recording buildings and monuments. Obviously, there is such a rich heritage here in Wales. It's a huge and endless task. We've been at it now for 120-something years, and we keep redefining heritage. And so it's an endless task. So we tend to focus on heritage that's at risk. So we've been doing a lot of work that you will hear about this evening, heritage that's at risk from climate change, heritage that's at risk from development, and heritage that's at risk from demotic change, for example, chapels that are no longer needed, churches and so on that are closing. So that's what we do, although we do some pure prospecting, aerial survey, and we will hear tonight about some new sites that have been discovered this year in Wales. Under the conserve heading, that doesn't mean conserving buildings, it means conserving the record. So we have this very rich resource called the National Monuments Record of Wales, which is hugely valued and used by everybody from planners, publishers, teachers, scholars, authors, researchers, all sorts of people, family historians, and it's a very important part of our work. And conservation also could refer to buildings. We don't actually get involved in, and I have to fend off often people coming to me and saying, oh, there's real threats to our local chapel, school, whatever it be, can you help us? We don't actually do that, but we do on a much more general level try to campaign and advocate for the buildings that are under threat as a category, and we will hear a little bit later about a big project that we are now undertaking, looking at non-conformist places of worship in Wales, because they are one of the biggest categories of heritage under threat at the moment. And then communicate. Well, that's what we're doing tonight. We are hoping to inspire. We aim to inspire people to understand and enjoy the rich heritage of Wales. And tonight is just part of the sort of communications activity that we do a huge amount more. I'm sure some of you are already well aware that we have a very lively programme of social media posts and blogs and friends newsletters and publications, organising events, guided tours, historic walks and so on. And I would, if you're not already aware of those, I would encourage you strongly to have a look at our website. You can sign up to be a friend. It's free, it costs nothing, and you get a regular newsletter, and it gives you discounts on our publications and so on. So enjoyment, that's what we're all here for tonight. I'm just going to hand over to my colleagues who are going to give you a very entertaining, I'm sure, account of our recent fieldwork. Over to you. Who's going first?
Thank you, Christopher. Diolch. So I'm going to briefly introduce my colleagues in the Commission survey team, and then we're going to hopefully give you a whistle-stop tour of some of the survey work that we've been doing over the last nearly 12 months or so. So the people on the left you're going to hear a bit more from in a minute, but also critically within the team we have Malia, who's not here tonight, based down in Swansea, who's within the historic buildings part of our survey, and Marco, who's probably even now out in the field somewhere. He's our geomatics officer, working hard, calibrating instruments and so on. So here he is in his natural environment. So that's us as a team. There's only 6 of us, so we're quite a small team, but we'd like to think that we can get quite a lot done. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about that, some of that just now. So one aspect of the Commission's work is looking at maritime archaeology and the maritime archaeological remains around the Welsh coast, particularly within the intertidal zone, which is what I do within the survey team. And within that, instead of trying to squeeze the great sort of richness and vastness of Wales's maritime archaeological resource into 12 minutes or so, I've taken inspiration from a Christmas card and a Christmas carol, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about 3 particular shipwrecks that we've been working on this year. But before that, a little bit of a flavour of some of those things. So these are all sites that we've recorded this year around the coast of Wales, from Stackpole Harbour in South Pembrokeshire down to a World War II gun emplacement at Pembrey, which is making a desperate attempt to become maritime archaeology and leaving the safety of the sand dune edge and heading out onto the beach. Lighthouse lenses that are being replaced by LEDs, RNLI slipways that are going to be demolished in advance of planning work. So a real richness and diversity to things aside from the shipwrecks that I'm now going to talk about for maybe 10 minutes. Is that okay with you all down there? Okay, so to do this, we're going to have a little bit of a tour around Wales. We're going to start over in Pembrey, where that gun emplacement was, a little bit further around the beach, Kevin Sidon, head up to the Thlin Peninsula, and then finish off down in Fishguard in the far west. So this is a little bit about a wreck called the Paul, and to distinguish it from people called Paul, it's commonly known as the SV Paul, which just means sailing vessel Paul. It was a 4-masted wooden schooner. It was built in Seattle in 1919, so quite a recent vessel. But it wrecked on the 30th of October 1925. It was inbound from Nova Scotia with a cargo of timber. It suffered storm damage in the Atlantic and then ran into fog in Carmarthen Bay and fetched up on the ever-shifting shoals and sandbanks at the mouth of the Towy and the Gwendryth rivers. Why are we interested in a relatively recent vessel? Well, the wrecking date here puts it now, as of the 30th of October this year, over that sort of 100-year anniversary, if you like, which from a significance point of view is seen by UNESCO within the Underwater Cultural Heritage Convention as giving it additional significance as a piece of underwater cultural heritage. It's also a really, really big wooden shipwreck from the very end of the days of sailing ships, when they were still conveying bulk commodities around the world. So in that sense, it has potential to give us a snapshot of that period of maritime history. So this is the site. It just gives you I think this is a drone image which has become one of the sort of the ubiquitous bits of survey kit that we now use, which 10 years ago we wouldn't have even gone near probably, because they were so much more difficult to use, but now allows us to get to places more easily, to work faster, to create more accurate records of things using the images that come from them and the photogrammetry, the 3D modelling that we can do with that. So this is the wreck of the Paul, 70 metres of wooden ship within the sandbank, and you get a real idea and a real sense of the expanse of sand, sea, river channels, shipwrecks, everything within there, all of these constantly shifting, and it only needs a little shift of the Gwendryth channel here to the south to start cutting into this site, eroding out more material, exposing archaeological material, and so on. This is just in the other direction, so you're looking down to the Worm's Head and the Gower down in this way, so looking to the south, but another idea of the scale of the ship, and there's me for a bit more scale down there. So in terms of some of those archaeological remains, the image on the screen here is a digital surface model which comes out of that survey work that we do. So it's a highly accurate 3-dimensional representation of the ship, in this case seen just from above. So it looks a bit like an archaeological plan, but there's a huge amount of additional data in here. And this wreck remains are incredibly well preserved, as I've said. You've got the foremast is still here, and it's quite uncommon to have the mast preserved on ships. It's really uncommon to have them at deck level. So you can go on this wreck if you're prepared to undertake the 10-kilometre walk to get there, or you've got to get a lift with the rangers. And you can stand on the deck of this ship. You can lean on the rail around the side of it. You can see all of the massive, great big cross beams that are still there. So there's huge amounts of constructional detail preserved within this site. really, really well. And to give you an idea of some of that, these are, as they seem, literally the blueprints of the original ship from the yard in Seattle. One of the advantages of vessels from this later period is the incredibly detailed and, in some cases, yes, really, really detailed set of historical material that we can have to them, from letters between owners and insurers, things about, I don't know, the boilers on some other ships and that kind of stuff. So what we've got here is the blueprints of the ship, and the archaeological stuff that we can see above the sand is just in this red box here. So below that, in the sandbank, is metres and metres of very well preserved wooden ship that gives us an almost unique insight into this type of vessel from that period in time. So this is one of those sites that changes, so we'll go back at some point and do some more work on it to understand how that changes and to document a little bit more of it as more of it gets exposed. Next stop, up to the Llŷn Peninsula, a very, very different scale of vessel. So this is the remains of a wreck at Morfa Nefyn. On the beach, you've got the sort of the shingle end, and the sea is in this direction up towards the top, basically at low tide. A vessel that became exposed for the first time in March of this year was reported to us by a member of the Coast Guard team there, and we were able to get out. I thought, a trip to the Llŷn Peninsula in July, what lovely weather there will be. And I was met by grey clouds and a lack of, you couldn't see all the lovely scenery. But you get an idea of what's exposed on the beach here. And this is very much the bottom end of a vessel, the lower part of it. It's only 8.5 metres in length. It's got this is probably the stern of the vessel, and the keel up here, which is the bit you can see here. So about 2.5 metres in width of what's preserved. So maybe the original ship was sort of around, let's say, 5 metres. And we know immediately from that we must be missing quite a lot of ship, because people rarely built things that were 8 metres long by 5 metres wide. It's a very bad shape for a ship. So it's probably maybe in the realm of 18 metres in length, something like that, to go by the normal proportions of things. Potentially one that was either wrecked on the beach or abandoned on the beach and then was broken up, and all the usable timber was taken away, used in barns and buildings and houses and that kind of thing. To rebuild things. You can look at it from the other direction. Here's the keel, the lower planking of the vessel, the frames. All actually looks a bit mucky here, but preserved because of the sediment that's over it that prevents organisms that eat wood from getting into it, preserved in lots and lots of detail. So in July we were up there undertaking some timber sampling. So we've got 14 samples of different parts of the vessel to be able to characterise what it's made from. So the keel is elm, for example, and the lower planking is elm. And then in due course, colleagues in Lampeter and Swansea should hopefully be able to give us a date for the vessel based on the tree ring dating that will allow us to understand the historical context of it a little bit more, understand its significance and so on. So that's a little bit of work on that. And then finally down to Fishguard, a wreck on the foreshore at Gydag there, which is quite a flat thing when you see it. So this is again from a drone. This is a 6 or 7 metres up. The sun is out in this picture, which is nice, looking north towards sort of Dinas Head, up in that direction. And then if we sort of go directly overhead of that vessel, we have a not uncommon situation of some frames sticking out of the sand, very, very low-lying, as I've said, maybe only 10 centimetres or so, some posts down the middle of it, 13 metres or so long, just about 4 metres wide. And what we've got with this is actually the whole ship kind of lying on its side, and it's almost like you've taken a slice along from bow to stern of the vessel, and we're looking at half a ship. And we can understand that process a little better from a much more recent vessel that was lost at Llandudno in the 1930s. This is the Flying Foam. After it was wrecked, and you've got basically the ship heeled right over on its side, a gangplank into the main cargo hatch, all the coal being unloaded. And after that, bits of the ship salvaged, taken away, used in buildings, all of this kind of thing. And we've probably got a similar kind of process to that. That's what we're seeing at Gydag. We did a probe survey across that wreck, not this year, this was a year or so ago. And in the middle of it is down to, you can go down to sort of about 1.2, 1.3 metres of sand, and then you hit wood again. So we're able to, in quite literally a blunt survey method, reconstruct a little bit how much there is under the sand of this vessel. So we've got a lot of one side of it. This timber we sampled in beginning of November this year, again to go through that process of dating. But it's a plank that is where the planking joins the bow or the stern of the vessel. So from that we know that we've got one end of it here, quite close to the actual end, and also that this is the top of the ship and the bottom of it is down here because of the angle of this cut. So we begin to get an understanding of the type of construction, the size of the ship, and the way it's put together and that kind of thing. And then the other thing that's happened with this vessel this year and why it's included here, because the work we've been doing on it has been sort of ongoing, was to reboot some of the dating work that was done on it. It was sampled for dendrochronological analysis back in 2016 when there was going to be some marine development there, which never produced a date. Swansea University have since developed a method using oxygen isotope analysis that gives you a date where you weren't getting the tree ring width dating previously, and that has moved this vessel from thought to have been a 19th century vessel back to a felling date of between 1588 and 1624. So suddenly a really significant vessel within Northwest European ship archaeology, contemporary with this map that's held within the library here, contemporary with things like the Spanish Armada, to put it into that kind of historical context. And to finish with 3 more ships off this map, this is probably this type of thing. We're not talking a big 3-masted galleon, sadly, that kind of thing. But what we are talking with real significance is a kind of a local coastal trading ship within the Irish Sea region of a type that we don't have anywhere else in Wales, and we don't really have many examples actually within the archaeological UK record. So I'll leave you on that note and hand over to Lou, who's going to come and talk to things maybe from the sea underground.
Thanks very much, Julian. Yes, we're moving on to dry land now, but we will be retaining some sea views as we look at some of the archaeological survey work we've been undertaking this year. Oh, wrong way. That's a good start. There we go. So I'm going to start with Skomer Island off the coast of Pembrokeshire, an island very much famed for its seabirds, its puffins and Manx shearwaters, but which its archaeology is also exceptional, as mapped on this image, a patchwork of fields and dispersed settlements. Now, the Commission has been working with colleagues from Cardiff, Sheffield and Aberystwyth since 2011 on this island, and through our survey and investigation and excavation, we've revealed a landscape that's been settled here from the Bronze Age through to the Iron Age and also into the medieval period and beyond. But this year we returned to the island to undertake some emergency recording prior to repair of 2 of the island's Bronze Age monuments, the Wick burial cairn and the Harold Stone standing stone. I think you can see from these images on the screen that you can see the clear change in condition to these monuments. Basically the result of visitor footfall, but also periods of quite excessive weather, from extreme dry conditions to very wet weather. And this has removed much of the grass and soil covering from these monuments. In the case of the Wick cairn at the top there, it's revealed the structure of the cairn, the stones that were placed over a likely cremation burial. And at the Harold Stone, we have new archaeology. You can see this small platform of stones that's emerging around the base of the actual standing stone, previously unrecorded and an exceptionally rare find. It's hard to find parallels to this site, but one comes from an excavation in the 1980s at the Devil's Quoit standing stone on Stackpool, a much larger platform, but here we found Bronze Age and later burials and cremations around this site. So there's Julian and deploying one of our little mini drones there, because this was the technology we used to undertake our mapping and recording work on the island. This was the first time we'd been able to use drones on the island and have been given permission. It was a good choice of equipment, as it meant that this limited our need really to step off the path into the fragile landscape that makes up the island, the landscape of bird burrows. So we used this sort of opportunity to do more, and over 3 sunny days, we were very lucky, back in April, we undertook the survey of 12 of the island's key monuments. This provides us with new digital surveys, but also 3D models that allow virtual access to the monuments. And you can see the link at the bottom of the screen there that will take you through to our Sketchfab page that you can have a look at these monuments. It's virtual access to monuments which the public can actually visit. Most of these are off the paths and will never be really seen by the public. The surveys covered a wide range of monuments from prehistoric roundhouses that you can see on the top there of the screen, but also more recent structures, the now roofless original farmhouse for the island that appears on the 1840 tithe map of the island, but very much resembles that of a medieval longhouse that has probably much earlier origins and certainly definitely back into the early 18th century. Using the drone also enabled us to get a clearer picture of some very fragmentary remains that are situated on the very narrow isthmus of land that links the main island block, which would be on the left, to the area known as the neck on the right of the photograph. This really is a highly sensitive area. It's in the middle of the Puffin colony, and you can see all of the burrows on that image. It meant it was really tricky to survey. That's me on the left, desperately trying to follow the warden as we picked our way across some of the stonework to lay out our survey control for the site. But what you can see on the right-hand side, you can probably clearly see the crossing wall, the clear wall that crosses the neck there. But what we wanted to see and what has been revealed is the fragmentary remains of other walls and other buildings. So we have actually unearthed a structure that's situated here. What is this structure? Well, we don't really know, but perhaps writing in the 16th century, John Leyland in his itinerary notes that the island at that point was unoccupied, but does mention a chapel on the island. So we're wondering if this could be the location of the Skomer Island Chapel. Our work also looked at two of the island's lime kilns, and this neatly links me into a second area of a big area of our study this year, which is on that of the coastal lime kilns of Wales. Now, lime kilns were once a very characteristic feature along the coastline of Wales in the 18th and 19th century. Their coastal location reflecting the need in many parts of Wales to ship in the limestone and the coal, the raw materials that were needed. Lime was used at that point to improve the acidic soils around for crop growing, but also to sweeten grass for pasture. But it was also obviously used in building. Most of these lime kilns were out of use at the turn of the 20th century, and that now increasingly threatened largely as a result of neglect. Now, the Skomer lime kiln is very well preserved and a really good example highlighting the main features. You see the crucible at the top of the kiln here, where alternate layers of coal and limestone were loaded into the kiln. And in the sides of the kiln, in the side walls, you see the kiln eyes, which connected to the base of the crucible and served for lighting the kiln and also managing the airflow and temperature of the kiln. After burning, which may take up to 1 or 2 days in some places, the resulting lime was raked out via these kiln eyes. So we've been working on the lime kilns for a couple of years now, and this year saw a number of studies and visits all around the coast. And we've now largely completed, this is a pan-Wales study obviously, and we've now largely completed our studies on Anglesey, Gwynedd, Ceredigion, a large proportion of Pembrokeshire, and down on the Gower. And our process here starts in the office, really. We do a desk-based assessment using the first edition and Ordnance survey maps tending to date from around the 1880s, which is our starting point to collate the initial list. And from this, we make all of the field visits to ascertain survival and condition. We undertake photography on all surviving remains and then follow that up with more detailed survey on those that are good representative examples. So of all of those sites, we currently have a data set of 327 lime kilns, for which just over half survive, though I do have to say that survival can actually just survive as a mound of stones all the way through to relatively well conserved examples. You'll see that from the range of images on the screen. And the kilns cover a range of forms, from the very small single kilns built to serve individual farms to the slightly grander, larger kilns that served estates or a consortium of farms, and also to the sort of bank of multiple kilns which operated as businesses and to serve and sell directly to the surrounding areas. A number of these also have additional features. At the top there, the Aberstrynsech lime kilns in Ceredigion between Llanrystud and Llanon is a very good example. And here in the intertidal zone, we have the quays for the ships that were dropping off the raw materials. We have coal yards to the rear of the kilns. And we also have an adjacent cottage and pub. We collect a variety of data about each kiln, which when analysed, eventually across the full monument type, will help inform typologies and distributions. And so, for example, the map that you're looking at there shows the 327 kilns classified according to their shape, broadly round or square. But I think it's quite clear that we can suddenly see a distribution that's emerging here with a clear north-south divide, square in the north, circular or round in the south, with Aberystwyth almost being that sort of break point. And it will be very interesting to see how this shape and the form and distribution goes as we head eastwards over the next winter and over the next year. So finally from me, another one of our thematic study areas is that of coastal promontory forts. Broadly dating to the Iron Age and Roman period. Around 110 of these are known in Wales, over half in Pembrokeshire, which is a bit like the lime kilns as well, actually. I don't think there's anything major about that, but Pembrokeshire seems to have a mass of these remains. But their coast edge locations marks them as a risk, and we've been witnessing partial collapse and loss at a number of these sites over the years. This year we've undertaken survey of several forts, some very well known but which don't have modern day surveys, and others that we have very little or no information on. And this is just one example, the castle on Boxpool Down in Pembrokeshire, which is situated on the Defence Estates Castle Martin Ranges. You can probably see the clear threat to this site. You've got blowholes developing through the archaeology and a whole cave system, which I think eventually will result in this site being severed and being split into two. This was a study site as part of our Cherish project for a number of years, and a couple of years ago we undertook the earthwork and UAV survey of the site. The survey plan, which you can see on the left, is one of our standard products that we produce from all of our topographic and earthwork surveys. It accurately maps out the key features of the fort and in turn helps us understand possible phasing and use. You can clearly see from this and the aerial photograph the triple line of defences, the main gateway, and an interior space that's covered in platforms and terraces upon which houses and structures would originally have stood. And these stand out particularly clearly on one of Toby's recent aerial surveys there. It's the greener areas that you can see, all of the house platforms there that are jam-packed into that interior. After Cherish, we felt this was a site that would really benefit from future work, and in discussion with the Defence Estates archaeologist, we've suggested it as a potential site for an archaeological excavation. And thus this year, we rarely get to do any excavations, so it was absolutely wonderful for us to work in partnership and join forces with the Defence Estate, the Pembrokeshire Coast National Park, ourselves and HENEB, who ran the excavation. And this was the first excavation on the site undertaken during 2 weeks in August. The trench located across two conjoined roundhouses in the centre of the fort there. And the excavations was part of Operation Nightingale, which offered opportunities to both serving and veteran military personnel. And what a sight. We never get great finds from promontory forts, or we never used to think we got great finds from promontory forts, and it was really unparalleled. It caught us all by surprise. We have a conjoined roundhouse that you can see on the bottom left here that's been cut into the limestone bedrock, the limestone used as walling. But also its natural formation looks like it's been used and formed integral features and furniture within the structures, from the threshold stones through to sort of almost like small cupboards. And the finds there are very much indicative of affluent occupants that were living in these particular structures during the Roman period, and occupants that were very well connected with the wider world, and we can see that from the finds assemblage. We had a dispersed coin hoard. Over 160 coins were found in this small excavation trench. We've got pottery that encompassed a range of everyday and fine wares. We have beautiful personal ornaments, which included brooches, this beautiful jet hairpin that you can see in the middle of the screen, a jet bracelet. You've got the blue glass beads that were coming out, but also a gaming counter. It was a really exciting excavation to be part of, and hopefully the first season of a couple of seasons that will be coming on stream. Hopefully it will be featured in Digging for Britain this coming January, so keep an eye out. And the plan is hopefully to be back on the site next August, and there's opportunities for visits and tours, so keep an eye on all the social media. So that's it from me, and I'm going to pass it over to Susie now to talk about the buildings work.
So, noswaith dda, everybody. So we're now moving from underground to overground to look at some of the historic buildings work from this year. I have to say, for my sites, it's like trying to choose which are your favourite children. So my approach is I'm cramming as many in as possible, so this is going to be a very whistle-stop tour of some of the things we've done this year. But again, just first as a little introductory slide, how we organise our building work. So we have our sort of thematic projects, which at the moment are very much around places of worship, focusing on nonconformist chapels, but we have been doing work on churches, Islamic heritage, Jewish heritage over the last few years, and then 20th century built heritage, which is a relatively new area for us, but is obviously a sort of area of built heritage where very little research and recording has been done. So it's very sort of introductory, and we're sort of trying to introduce 20th century built heritage to be a bit more acceptable and a bit more understood and a bit more appreciated. And then alongside our thematic work, we have our threatened building survey. So in the Commission, we're pretty much still the one organisation where if there is very important buildings at threat, whether they're listed or not listed, where there is an immediate risk of demolition or loss, and where no other recording is possible, then we are the body who can step in and help with that. So moving to a rapid run of some of these highlights, I thought I'd start with a building which I knew everybody would love, sort of very representative of these large post-war civic buildings, which are one of our most at-risk types. And this is Shire Hall Mould, officially opened in 1968 as the new home for Flintshire County Council. It was part of a £2 million county centre development alongside the new law courts and the county library, which aimed to bring all the county council administration and running onto one 52-acre site. Supposedly making it one of the most efficient and up-to-date councils in Wales. And this towering 7-storey block cost £1 million. It was designed by county architect Robert W. Harvey, and it is claimed to be the first civic building in the country to use John Lang's new industrialised system, which we haven't quite been able to verify yet. But basically large fabricated sections, including the whole window surrounds, were transported to site and lifted into place, which halved the construction time to 18 months and saved £100,000, which obviously for county councils might learn a lesson from this today. And this sort of repeating design has drawn very favourable comparisons to the US Embassy in London, although locals less favourably call it Legoland. Staff reportedly were very excited to move into this more custom-designed office block, which had a courtyard garden, which you can just see here, which was complete with a pond with fountains, trees and flower beds to provide a relaxing atmosphere. On the top here we can see a image that was put out in 1966 of how the Shire Hall was supposed to look. Unfortunately, this very space-age council chamber at the front wasn't built. The council chamber actually is sort of absorbed and built within that block. And the very first debate to take place in that new council chamber in November 1967 was on the reorganisation of the Welsh counties. And obviously this had been on the cards for a while, so the building had been designed to be able to adapt and expand to response to that expansion of services and staff. And in 1972, I'm not quite sure how to do the laser, these 3 rear ranges were added that sort of more than doubled the capacity and ready for the creation of the new county of Clwyd in 1974. And then in the foyer, which is still there, is this beautiful ceramic artwork, which was commissioned from Cheshire-based artists Anne and Philip Plant, which really was designed to ground the new building in the history of the county. So it includes this lovely map of historic Flintshire, accompanied by community heraldic devices, and then this lovely range of depictions of sort of historical and archaeological items. So we have the Caergurley bowl, we have Rill Pier, we obviously have the collieries, the Mold Gold Cape, and the sort of Buckley pottery. We're not quite sure what this is, so if anybody has any ideas, it looks like a sort of atomic age industrial item, but we haven't quite been able to pin that down. And obviously, Shire Hall is a very distinctive landmark. It has divided opinion since it was built. It appears on every list of Wales's ugliest buildings. But others, including me, absolutely love it. Now the council workers are all being moved to alternative, locally based offices around the county. So it now looks as though its time is coming to an end. The rear extensions were all demolished in 2020, and it's intended to demolish the rest of the building in the next couple of years. And this isn't an isolated event, as the Gwent County Hall in Cwmbran was demolished in 2021. The former South Glamorgan County Hall in Cardiff Bay is due for demolition, and the former West Glamorgan County Hall in Swansea also has an uncertain future. So we're looking at a whole generation of custom-built civic buildings that represented that new political identity in Wales in the early 1970s, sort of disappearing, making sure that it's very important, if not physically saved, then they are digitally documented and made available for future generations. But then to move right to the other end of the scale of 20th century heritage, we go to Oakdale in Merthyr, which is a private house from 1971, which was designed by the architect Ivan Priest Edwards, who also designed a beautiful house upon the hill, I'm sure many of you know, for James and Margaret Granger. And I suspect James, who is a civil engineer, very much appreciated the cantilevered architecture, but it was Margaret who worked very directly with the architect to design a home that suited their very social lifestyle. So you have this lovely broken plan living and dining area, complete with a built-in bar and modern features such as the lime green glass wall, which separates off the kitchen, which was really designed for entertaining family, friends, and James's work parties. And apparently, according to their daughters, they did like their parties. And costing around £30,000 when new, no expense was spared when it came to furnishing the property, from handmade Italian carpets, which are still throughout, to the latest technology. So there's a sound system connected to speakers in every room, and an inter-room intercom system. So there's an intercom between the bedroom and the kitchen, for instance. And Margaret Granger carried on living here until 2022, and she preserved these interiors in beautiful condition. So they're a very rare survival of a complete design scheme of this date. The house is still owned by the family, but obviously we don't know how long that might be. And it's this sort of interior design scheme that's really vulnerable to new owners coming in, and obviously with different taste. So it was very important to get this sort of visual record. Moving from the 20th into the 21st century, early in the year we liaised with the Welsh Government over recording the Senedd chamber. So this was obviously opened March the 1st, 2006 as the first permanent home for Welsh Government. And it was very, very precisely designed by Ivan Harbour of the Richard Rogers Partnership as a very highly symbolic building. It has a very heavy base of slate that sort of grounds the building to the earth. It has glass walls, which make transparent the democratic process, and this lovely undulating timber roof that provides the shelter. And the chamber sits right at the very heart of that Senedd building. It's designed in the round, very specifically to encourage inclusive debate and collaboration between the parties, rather than that sort of opposition that you get in the Houses of Parliament. But it's also designed very deliberately as a functional place of work. But overhead, you have this beautiful sense of grandeur provided by a tundis, this beautiful sort of funnel-shaped structure, which consists of 89 reflective tubes, at the top of which is a conical mirror that sort of bounces light from above down into the chamber. Obviously, with the May 2026 elections increasing the number of Senedd members from 60 to 96, alteration work started in April, I think, to increase the size of the chamber and sort of the number of seats. So this really prompted us to make sure that we recorded, I think, our first 21st century building as one of sort of such national, architectural and political significance. So no building is too young for us to consider. Probably more well known, as Christopher has already mentioned, is our recording and research work on nonconformist chapels as one of Wales's other most vulnerable building types. And this year we continued with our rolling programme of recording a range of the best examples of different forms, different architects, different denominations, different styles, again prioritising those which are at risk of closure. So Tabernacle Holyhead was recorded in the spring as it was put on the market by the congregation, a member of whom sort of contacted us to ask us if we could ensure that the building and its associated heritage was digitally preserved for the future. And this is a chapel with a very long and important history. It was the first independent chapel built in the town in 1824, although the cause goes further back. And that original building measured just 45 by 39 foot. But from these small beginnings, the congregation grew very rapidly. During the 1859-60 revival alone, it jumped from 350 to 600 members. And this growth led to multiple extensions and rebuildings, as well as the formation of two daughter chapels in the same town. So, you know, it certainly has an important place. And then the final phase of major work was undertaken in 1913 when this sort of very grand, unusual facade was added and the large pipe organ installed. So with this building, we've laser scanned it inside and out. We've also done external photogrammetries and the drone that Julian mentioned, which has allowed us to produce the model and a full suite of new photographic survey. And that's our fairly standard practice for the sort of the building survey. But then, obviously, it's not just architecture of chapel, it's about all the people who were members who were part of that chapel community. So obviously important things like the memorials to ministers, in this case the very remarkable William Griffiths, who was minister here for 60 years from the age of 20, and members of the congregation who lost lives in world wars. We have memorials, patrons, worshippers and supporters. So all of these things which are very vulnerable. At the moment, there's planning. The chapel has now been sold. There's a planning application to turn it into a gym. So obviously that will have a substantial effect on the interior, and particularly these sort of smaller elements that will likely disappear. And then closer to home, we have Mynegwyn Chapel up in Machynlleth, which was similarly recorded in the summer. And another listed chapel, it has a sadly familiar story of closing as unable to fund essential maintenance. They weren't able to get their building insurance, so it's closed and is now currently on the market. And the origins of this cause date to the 1790s, but in 1896 it was decided that rather than being on the outskirts of town, they needed a new, more prominent chapel right in the town centre. And so they commissioned an architect from Oswestry, William Spall, who's quite well known in the area, to design a chapel with this very grand sort of show-face facade right in the middle of Mynegwyn Street, and so very prominent within the town. And it opened in November 1867, having cost around £4,000, which was a substantial amount, and it is recorded that the congregation was somewhat nervous about spending that much money, but has provided a very important presence in Machynlleth's main street ever since. But again, as well as with the building itself, it's obviously important to identify and record the archival material that's kept in the chapel or with the congregation as part of our survey. And in this case, we found this beautiful original specification for the Conacher organ installed in 1891, along with this lovely early photo of it actually in use. And there's a very particularly lovely part of the specification which sort of says that none but the very best selected and well-seasoned materials should be used, and the workmanship to be of the highest quality, and the voicing to be carefully and artistically executed, which I think is particularly nice. And as Christopher mentioned, in September we were able to announce a successful grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund for the development phase of a new Capelli Cymru project. And this will run alongside our research project. But here we will be working with a wide range of stakeholders, including denominations, heritage organisations, planners, architects and communities, to understand, document and more strategically address the challenges that are leading to such rapid and wide-scale loss of Wales's nonconformist heritage. So over the next 15 months, we will be carrying out sort of consultation around 4 key areas: maintaining chapels in use, the closure process, sustainable reuse of chapel buildings, and engagement and understanding, as well as a national census to map the current state of chapel buildings, archives, objects, intangible heritage. You'll be hearing a lot more about this project through 2026. We will be looking for people to volunteer with our chapel census, so if any of you are interested in that, then do please keep an eye out. And then very finally for me, an important example of our emergency recording work this year, which was the Corbett Arms Hotel in Towyn, which I know has had a lot of news coverage and you may well have heard of. This hotel had been closed since around 2009, and with uncertain ownership had fallen into disrepair. It had been monitored by Gwynedd County Council, who had concerns about it, but these were very much exacerbated by a major collapse to part of the rear elevation in February. With no recourse to developer-funded survey work because of the ownership situation, the Commission was able to step in and ensure that the exterior was digitally documented through laser scanning and photogrammetry, and that was captured, so should the worst happen and further collapse occur, then we had that digital documentation. Again, as a listed building, we've been able to carry out further research as part of that hotel, which over time has been variously known as the Raven Hotel, the Raven and Corbett Arms, and then finally the Corbett Arms. And we've been able to bring the first documented reference from about 1820 to sort of 1773, which was nice. And then with at least 2 known phases of major expansion and modernisation throughout the 19th century, carried out in line with Towyn's sort of growing popularity as a seaside resort. We hope that now the building has been able to be stabilised, we can work further with the council to carry out more survey and research work, including the interior, which we couldn't access for safety reasons. So again, watch the space around this in 2026. We'll be doing more work. And with that, I'll hand over to Toby for our final section.
Tag team, absolutely. Thanks, Susie, that's great. Nos Fyddar pawb, good to see you all. And it falls to me to wrap up proceedings tonight with a little look at Wales from the air in 2025. And you join us on the left here, high over the Welsh borders, the desert lands of eastern Wales this summer. A pilot, Eric, in shorts, buzzing around looking for archaeology in eastern Wales there during the aerial survey this year. So the Royal Commission carries out aerial survey across Wales from our base in Haverfordwest, where we hire plane and pilot, and we route out across Wales to the north of Anglesey, right down to Chepstow and up to Wrexham as well. Our chosen platform for photography is the Cessna light aircraft, a lovely thing to fly around in, 4 seats, high wings. We can look down at the landscape below us. So it's a really good way to survey Wales, and it takes us obviously much further than a drone can take us, 3 to 5 hours across Wales, looking for archaeology, monitoring the past. It's quite cramped inside the cockpit here. You're shoulder to shoulder with the pilot. The pilot looks after all the navigation and the air traffic control, and we open the window and orbit around our site of choice to record it. So 2025 was a very hot year, announced in September as the hottest summer on record for Wales, surpassing 1995, the driest spring for 50 years. But these drought summers are rolling along every 2 years now. It's quite shocking. We used to have to wait 8 or 10 years for a real drought to penetrate Wales. We have weekly readings from the Met Office of the state of drought in the country from April through to September to allow us to prioritise our time in the air. And this year was a game of 2 halves, really. Despite it being the driest on record, the west and north were really hit by a lot of rainstorms over the summer, whereas the east had very little rain from March all the way through to September. It's extraordinary. And so we focused a lot of our work this year in the central valleys of Wales, Monmouthshire and up the eastern side of Wales here, balancing out work over the last 3 years in the west and the south there as well. And there were some days we really did want to just pop into a swimming pool. This is Ponty Lido in July, absolutely busy, chock-a-block after its renovation, and nice to see from the air. So when we're flying around in a drought summer, we're looking for lost monuments that have been ploughed away over the decades or the centuries, of which there's very little surface topography left. An entire monument can be ploughed away, so there's nothing to see at ground level but a flat field. But in a drought summer where crops and grass are put under stress, buried lines of hidden monuments reappear under the grass. Now this is Brecon Gaia Roman fort near Brecon with consolidated excavated Roman gates and the rampart around it, but you can see hints of the Roman roads inside, a mansio or little hotel building there, a bathhouse emerging in this penetrating drought of August. But our eyes are quite bad at seeing these faint yellows and greens, especially in drought pasture. So we run this through a computer program. We bump up the red bands, drop the green bands, and you can see an enormous amount of new data emerging from that same photograph. It's quite remarkable. So a lot of the photographs that we publish, or we'll see in this talk, of crop marks are in black and white because we've rebalanced those colour bands. So early in the season, we're routing across Wales, assessing the state of drought, but also picking up other priority monuments to record. And this year that included Oakwood Theme Park in Pembrokeshire, which are closed in March. So we did a detailed aerial survey in May of it, and some of the rides are already being mothballed and packed up at that stage. We also routed up the west coast of Wales to Anglesey. That's Puffin Island on a serial, and the lighthouse there as well. We saw drought up to Harlech, and then north of Harlech, very little drought evidence at all. So we were still recording lots of other monuments on a flight like that. A typical flight early in the season would be this one from 19th of May, when we're leaving the airport at 12:30 from Haverfordwest and getting back at 5:30. Eric there supervising fuelling of the Cessna at the airport, filling it right up to the very top for a long day's flying. And we're routing out over Strata Florida excavations all the way up to central Wales. over Pentracamp, just beginning to parch in the drought, near Llanfair Corinion, showing us multiple ramparts, right up to the north coast of Wales, Prestatyn, Point of Ayr, and then dropping back, or also actually getting shots like Mould Shire Hall for our colleagues in the office, and then dropping back into Welsh Pool after about 3 hours for tea and cake, and then routing back here once the pilots seem to be refreshed, ready to sort of start work on cataloguing and sorting out what we've done. But it was into July that we really saw widespread parching of grasslands across east and southeast Wales. This view at Raglan really sums up that desert conditions we were seeing. So you pass out of the greens of Carmarthenshire into the browns of Brecconshire and eastern Monmouthshire. So we have Raglan here, the connecting road to the M4, Chepstow down here in the second Severn crossing down here, and really every field showing potential for showing buried archaeology. No monuments like Carly and Roman Amphitheatre showing parch marks emerging from beneath and around it. Monuments that we know about, like a potential Roman villa near Shire Newton that we discovered in 2018, showing again, but steadily being ploughed away. The centre of the monument started to disappear. There's lots of fragile remains in South Wales that need better recording. But we focused a lot of our time in Monmouthshire this year. It's a difficult county because the crops ripen early in sort of June, and we need to know more about what's buried there. And with systematic survey this year, we had about 25 new sites come out, a pair of square enclosures near Cumbran, this one potentially a small villa enclosure, and tucked in a little green valley here, rather nice. A nice Romano British farmstead near Trelech in a field. You can see mature trees alongside the path, showing it's the scale of this site. It's tucked into a little lee in the field. And near Raglan as well, a lovely little Bronze Age or Iron Age hill fort, a hilltop enclosure on a little knoll, but a very nice, heavily defended late Iron Age farmstead here, similar to a couple that we know of down near Chepstow, just before the Roman conquest. Heavily defended, prestigious little residence for a minor chief of the Silures tribe, no doubt. So that's a very nice discovery near Raglan. So we had a good clutch of discoveries. Up north into the borders around Montgomery and Welshpool, we're over land that's been well flown for archaeology for 50 years or so. And here we can see Montgomery and the castle, Offers Dyke stretching up here, and in the distance Cadair Idris, the Rhinogydd and Arenig Fawr and Awyr snowed into the distance. A lovely clear day for aerial photography, and Eric and I there enjoying ourselves on the plane. But busy over here. Many sites that we know about, but that we haven't shown for about 10 or 15 years, we're showing this summer. Near Prestine, we have a remarkable Roman temple or temenos enclosure with faint inner enclosures here as well, discovered in 2005 at the confluence of two local rivers, and undoubtedly formalised as a late Iron Age religious settlement in the same place. And there's only about 4 or 5 of these in eastern Wales. So it's a very nice sight to see again. And flying over Offers Dyke near Knighton, where we've got a lot of new research going on, we came up with a newly discovered Iron Age style enclosure with a little defended gateway just about 500 metres from Offers Dyke, and the dyke goes around this. So it was obviously avoided by the dyke builders. So a nice piece of earlier history which relates directly to the dyke there coming up as well. We had some challenges with cloud and wind during July and August, but we managed to get up again as the drought penetrated in August. Here we are as Green Man at Glanusk is being set up with summer haze and the valleys looking west towards Brecon, and also smoke from grass fires on one of Llangattock. But a typical flight here at these late days, 3 hours from Buckspool Promontory Fort, you saw in Lou's presentation, through to Brecon, Hay-on-Wye, Monmouth, Kiley, and just trying to get all those last crop marks before the rain starts to fall. And it was brilliant, actually. We very rarely get severe drought penetration into the heartlands of Banau Brycheiniog National Park, up the Usk Valley, west of Llangors into Brecon. It's a very upland, mountainous part of the country. And so we were delighted to get parch marks around Brecon Cathedral here, which appear to show a series of buried ditches and walls. I don't know what those may be, but we'll pass those on to people who know more than us about it. Also elements of Bronze Age ritual from 4,500 years ago, appearing near Tower, a great 27-metre diameter barrow with a central grave pit visible. These are silage bales for scale. And then near Brecon, a lovely little complex, parching out in pasture, a hengiform monument, late Neolithic potentially, with a gateway that faces the gateway of this monument, which may be Bronze Age or Iron Age. That's built over by another oval structure, potentially a large building, about 30 metres across, another faint circular building here, and pits around which may be periglacial features, but may also be grave pits as well. So we'll be looking to work with the National Park archaeologists on this site, if we can gain permission to carry out surveys like geophysical surveys to understand more. Final slide from me. It's great discovering all these things. They add to our knowledge of the Welsh landscape and they feed into the work of other researchers. But sometimes they hit the nail right on the head. Mark Lewis, the curator at Caerleon Legendary Museum, had been asking me to survey over Tredannog on the Usk Valley near Caerleon over the years. And this year we were over it in just the right conditions. Now, in 1692, when grave digging at Tredannog Church, they dug up a Roman inscription there. You can read it there as I speak, memorialising the burial of Julius Julianus, a soldier of the Second Legion Augusta, who served 18 years, aged 40, was buried by his wife Amanda. So quite a touching, poignant monument. Now, this summer, in the field next to the church, we came up with a lovely rectangular enclosure with quite sharp angles, not a military enclosure. We class this probably as a Romano-British farmstead, maybe even a small villa site. But with association of the nearby inscription, this might even be where Julius and Amanda lived, but who knows? But it's really nice to get this association of a 400-year-old discovery with one from this year. So it's been a busy year for us all, a busy year for the team. Lots of work to do as the rain falls over Christmas. But I'd like to leave you with a wintry shot from the 12th of January, a couple of years ago, over wrth, the peak of Snowdon with a winter inversion coming off, showing the spectacular landscape of Wales from the air. So, diolch yn fawr all. Thank you for your attention this evening. And we do have time for some questions as well. Many thanks.
Is there anybody else? No? Well, in that case then, I think we'll end it there. So, diolch yn fawr, thank you all for coming along. And if you'd just like to thank our speakers one last time before you head off.